Breaking news we are tracking this evening. Hello everyone, good evening. US President Donald Trump has spoken with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is something that the US envoy Sergio Gor told us on X, and now we have Prime Minister Modi, who has also tweeted confirming these talks with the US President. This is what the Prime Minister has written. He says, received a call from President Trump and had a useful exchange of views on the situation in West Asia. India supports de-escalation and restoration of peace at the earliest. Ensuring that the Strait of Hormuz remains open, secure and accessible is essential for the whole world, the Prime Minister writes. He also goes on to say, we have agreed to stay in touch regarding efforts towards peace and stability. Let me go straight across to Srinjoy, who is joining us on the broadcast. Srinjoy, first, it was the Americans who let us know that Donald Trump and Narendra Modi have had a phone call. And now the Prime Minister has tweeted out some details as well, saying that he got a call from President Donald Trump. And they did speak about the Strait of Hormuz and the necessity to keep it open. But more importantly, efforts to try and bring about some amount of peace in the Middle East. Anything more that you're picking up?
Yes, very importantly, the message is here that the president called the prime minister. So the president himself picked up the phone and called the prime minister. And clearly, this is a time when India is important, because India has made it very clear. It wants peace, it wants stability, it wants dialogue leading to de-escalation. That's the Indian position, and it has been for a while. Now, this is exactly what Prime Minister has said to President Trump. Let's not forget, Prime Minister has also spoken to the President of Iran. He also is in touch with everyone concerned, as is the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who has spoken with his counterparts in America and also Iran. So Marco Rubio and Jaishankar have been in touch. Also, Arakchi of Iran and Jaishankar. So as a result, India is trying to do what it can to ensure peace happens. It is so important, keeping in mind not just India's interests, because 9 million Indians live in the area. It is also because of oil flows. It is also because remittances. It's actually the safety and security of that entire region. I mean, there are thousands and millions of people who live there. And if today there had been an escalation as opposed to a 5-day truce, if you can call it that, things would have got very ugly. So it's important that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump spoke. Okay. It's important that President Pezeshkian and Prime Minister have spoken in the past, as have these conversations at the foreign minister level. Okay. But the peace is essential, and this is the message that the Prime Minister gave to the President.
I just want to once again read out for our viewers what exactly the Prime Minister has said about this phone call, as Sushant Sareen joins us on this broadcast as well. Hi, Sushant, give me a moment here. This is what the Prime Minister is saying. He said, I've received a call from President Trump and had a useful exchange of views on the situation in West Asia. He goes on to write that India supports de-escalation and restoration of peace at the earliest. He also goes on to say that ensuring that the Strait of Hormuz remains open, secure and accessible is essential for the whole world. He is also saying that both him and President Trump have agreed to stay in touch regarding efforts towards peace and stability. Sushant, what do you make of this statement? What do you make of this phone call?
Shreya, it's very difficult to make anything out of these statements, frankly, because these are, boilerplate kind of a statement that we spoke and that we've agreed to stay in touch. And obviously they were speaking about, the current situation in West Asia, but it does not inform us any better of exactly what was discussed. We all know what our positions are, as Srinjoy very correctly laid out. This is what the Indian position is. I wish I was a fly on the wall listening into that phone conversation, because I would be interested in knowing, was there any ask from the American side from India? Did they ask us for some assistance, some help, some intermediation? Was there any ask from the Indian side of the United States? Any suggestion on what the US could do to de-escalate? We don't know any of that. And as long as we don't know it, we are firing shots in the dark based on pretty boilerplate kind of tweets from the Prime Minister and from the US Ambassador to India. We really don't know because this is purely bare bones kind of a sketch, what has come out. Just what Shinjoy was saying, there is no pause really. What they've not done is they've not attacked some of the critical infrastructure which they were threatening to attack. So to that extent, yes, there's a pause. But apparently the strikes against each other are going on as we speak. So I don't think there's a real pause in the hostilities as such. And frankly, the entire business of whether there is some kind of an initiative, diplomatic initiative underway, is again people firing in the dark. We don't know because the Iranians have clearly denied, which I'm not entirely surprised. They might even be talking, but and they would rather deny it. But there are reports that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Islamabad. What are they for? There is some speculation that it might be to press the Pakistanis to open a second front. It might be because there is some Iranian interlocutor whom they wish to meet out there. Whether anything will come out of that meeting, we don't know.
Okay.
But there's a lot of these things flying around, and we really don't know how this thing is going to settle, if at all it will settle anytime soon.
Okay, so give me a moment here, Sushant. This is something that Srinjoy pointed out. Srinjoy, give me a moment here because I just want to take something you said to Sushant as well. Srinjoy pointed out that, this is important, that it is the Prime Minister of India who actually received a call from President Donald Trump, which means that the Americans have reached out. Now, if we know that the Americans have reached out, and two of the things that have been spoken about, yes, there are no details, but at least there's a mention on both sides, both the US statement and the Indian statement, about keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, about the fact that there needs to be a de-escalation. This conversation, I'm sure, was not just to say, hello, how are you doing? How's the weather? Sushant.
No, yeah, but I don't know what exactly they were discussing. Look, when we say, for example, that, the Straits of Hormuz, or both India and the United States agree that the Straits of Hormuz should be kept open, that's like saying there should be peace and prosperity in the world. That's a no-brainer. Yes, the Straits of Hormuz should be kept open. How do you propose to open it? What is proposed to be done to keep them open? Does anybody pressure Iran to keep them open? Do you tell the Americans and the Israelis to back down from the attacks so that, the Iranians can allow traffic through and stop holding the entire global trade hostage? And the world hostage really to the energy crisis, which is looming large over everybody. What exactly was being discussed? If you're just talking principles that yes, everybody should be happy, everybody should be spiritual, that kind of nonsensical stuff, then that's one thing. That does not lead us anywhere. And we really don't know which is exactly, Shreya, what I asked you. We don't know what was the ask from the American side?
Sure.
When we say that, look, we are critically dependent on the Straits of Hormuz, our people out there, etc., all the stuff which Shinjoy was laying out for us. The next logical question to any Indian would be, then what do you propose to do about it? If at all that question was raised, then what did we say in return?
Yes.
And if we asked the Americans to do something or to back down or to step off, the escalation ladder, then what exactly was the American response to it?
Okay.
Did they then ask us to do something in return? So we don't know any of it. And as long as we don't know it, we can keep speculating about what was being discussed.
Okay.
But quite clearly, I would imagine that they were not calling up to discuss the weather. But what exactly they discussed, frankly, I don't know.
Srinjoy is laughing. Srinjoy, I have exactly 20 seconds. Can you help us? I'm sure you've been speaking to your sources once it came to light that President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi have had a chat. Are you picking up anything at all apart from what has been put out by the American side and the Indian side on what possibly these discussions could have been? We have, we generally know what it was. Of course, there are no details forthcoming.
Well, if the Straits of Hormuz is an issue, it could be well about how this process could go ahead. And what Sushant said is right. If the Straits of Hormuz has to be kept open, then the Americans and the Israelis have to step back and say, look, we won't bomb Iran anymore. So if you had 7,000 strikes, really, then naturally the Iranians and now realize that the big weapon they have is the Straits of Hormuz. And they have used it and used it well. Basically, now the question is, how do you keep the Straits of Hormuz open? Perhaps that was really the main issue for the discussions.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you, Sushant, for joining us. Thank you, Shunjoy, for joining us on the broadcast as well. The